Freedom Movement, where we help you to awaken to your higher calling, build a badass business, and that lifestyle that we all crave. And today, to help us do that, we have the amazing Christine Hassler. Thanks for being with us, Christine.
I love playing with you guys. It's so fun.
Awesome. And as you guys know, I'm your host, Shereen Thor, and we have the amazing Julie Migneault, who's going to hook us up with some logistics.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us. If this is your fourth day with us, we're so excited that you're coming back. I keep getting all your emails that you're loving the content and loving all of the wisdom our peeps are sharing, and so we love having you. Thank you so much for being here. Now, this is an incredible opportunity to ask questions and get Christine's personal feedback, so we are super, super lucky for the generosity that she's sharing, so make sure to be chatting us up. Head over to the chat. Let us know that you can hear us and start the conversation. We really want to make this an engaging, interactive time together. And now let me introduce Christine. Christine Hassler is an author, life coach, and speaker who is known for inspiring radical self-direction and reflection and practical direction. She'll be busting the myth to having it all. So welcome, Christine. Thank you so much for being with us. I'd love to just hear a little bit about your journey. How did you get started on this path of an entrepreneur that's really spirit and heart-centered, and what was that journey like for you?
Let me see. I've been asked that question so many times over the past decade. Let me see if I can answer it a little more creatively. It was actually never planned. You know, I know a lot of people want to be an entrepreneur and plan it, but I can think back to when I was little, and I remember my parents used to tuck me in at night, and they would lay across me to tuck me in, you know, and I'd be like, I want to be free, I want to be free, I want to be free. And ever since I was little, I have so valued freedom. It is my number one value. Not that I can't commit to things or I'm irresponsible, but I love freedom, you know. And when I was in school, I was an overachiever, straight A student, very successful. Moved out to Hollywood because I was also desperately insecure as a kid growing up. And when you're insecure, you move to Hollywood. That's where it's a land of insecurity, and try to prove yourself. And that's what I did anyway. And I worked my way up. I was the youngest ever female agent, and I was just miserable because, you know, so no matter what I did, no matter which box I checked off my checklist, no matter how much weight I lost or guy I was with or promotion I got or celebrities I was hanging out with, this void inside of me was never being fulfilled. And I also felt in working for someone else, I didn't feel free. I didn't feel free creatively. I didn't feel free with my time. Time freedom is huge for me. And just having to be somewhere every day at 9 a.m., I would just drag myself there. So I ended up resigning from my job, and that led to a series of events. Resigned from my job, went into debt, didn't talk to my family for a while, got diagnosed with an undiagnosable autoimmune disorder, and got dumped by my fiance 6 months before my wedding. So career, family, health, guy, all fell apart. And I had basically a bathroom floor suicidal moment that turned into a spiritual awakening. And I got on my knees, and I, just said, I will dedicate my life to helping other people if I figure my way through this. So that very next day or the day after, I got a very clear vision of my first book. And I mean, maybe you've heard people get downloads or things channeled through them. I felt like it was just the information just came out of me. And as I was interviewing people for the book, they kept wanting to talk to me more and saying, aren't you a coach or a counselor? I'm like, no, I'm just a personal trainer. I don't do any of these things. And person after person after person kept saying, you need to be a coach, you need to be a counselor. And so I heard it time and time again, and I was like, all right, I guess this is what I'm supposed to do. And that just led to coaching, then that led to speaking because people wanted to hear what I had to say, and then that led to facilitating retreats, and that led to more books, and it just was an ongoing thing. But I think the key thing I did in terms of being, charting my course as an entrepreneur is really understanding and embracing how much I value freedom and what I will do to create that for myself. Because being an entrepreneur, as you know, is not a piece of cake. There's many challenges. So really owning freedom, that's a value for me. And the second one was really getting clear on sort of my life lessons, my soul path, and really getting into alignment with who I am and how I want to serve the world versus trying to be anybody else.
I love that. You're just so much of your story is resonating true for with my story and so many others that I know are here right now. And I think that what I really like what you're saying is that piece, look, I'm just curious, like, what do you think that does for your path as an entrepreneur, like getting aligned with your particular life lessons and who you are? Like, how does that change the course of your path as an entrepreneur?
I'm seriously getting goosebumps as you're saying this. It makes it so much easier, you know? It makes it so much easier. And for all of you out there, I'm sure you slip into what I call comparison comas. You look at everybody else and what they're doing, and they're like Facebook followers and this and that, and it's just like, oh, it's crazy making. And we all have unique gifts. There's enough abundance to go around. There's enough people to serve to go around. And so there's two things. One, it's not comparing ourselves to others. And two, it's really having the courage to do our own work. You know, I use the frame light worker a lot, and that's a word that's used in the spiritual community. And to me, it's not a woo-woo word. I like to blend the spiritual and the practical. So to me, a light worker is someone who's done the work to work through all their dark, you know, crap, to really get to the light, you know, and to accept their soul curriculum and use that. Because if you look at the word passion, for example, I love words, I love the meanings of words, and it dawned on me that the original definition of the word passion is suffering. That's the original definition, Passion of the Christ. Over time, we've evolved that word to mean what we love. And I truly believe that so often how we want to serve comes from our suffering, you know, comes from our expectation hangovers. And that makes us so passionate about how we want to serve the world. So when we get really clear on that and we do the work to get from the dark to the light inside ourselves, then we're really clear on who we want to serve. And so we can focus not only on like our own life path, but we can really focus on the type of people that we want to serve. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. And oops, there's an echo. I love that it becomes easier when I made the decision to leave my corporate career. I was so burnt out that I made this really strong commitment to not grow my out of alignment with it. And that's things down. I think I know how to produce and get stuff done, so it really slows things down for me, but ultimately it's giving me the freedom that I want.
Yeah, maybe not. You know, like bamboo, you plant it and it takes like 7 years or something crazy to get to the surface. But then when it sprouts, it can grow like 7 feet in a year or something like that. I have it in my book, the statistics, but it's just crazy when you think about it. And I think that that's what we have to be mindful of in the entrepreneurial world. It's so easy with the internet and social media and everything to build fast and furiously. But if we're going outside in, we're not breaking that pattern of, you know, looking for something outside of us to fulfill us. And that internal work you did, you know, it might have, quote unquote, slowed you down in terms of external results, but what you're creating is so much more in alignment. And then because of that internal work, then we can create momentum. You know, like I don't really have to do much to market my business. Things come to me because of the momentum I've built by doing my own work. Now, I'm not saying that I just sit around and go to retreats and read self-help books and like, you know, like all of a sudden, you know, my business is there. I've definitely invested in my business and worked to build it. But it came from that place of authenticity versus trying to make stuff happen.
I love that. Yeah. Slowing down.
Yeah, exactly. And I think in our instant gratification society, we don't value slowing down and going within. But at the end of my life, I want to know that I've, you know, resolved a lot of my issues, moved from the dark to the light as much as I can, nourished my relationship with my higher power, with the people that I love in my life, taking care of myself mentally, physically, and made a contribution. And I remember my coach who coached me for 12 years, who passed away unexpectedly, she said to me, you know, if you've helped one person, you've done your job. It's not how many people we help. It's really the energy the help rides on.
That is so cool. I'm hearing an echo from you too.
Are you second? I think, Christine, you're which is where that echo's coming from.
Let me try something.
It will go away.
Try and plug my mic. Does that
Maybe
help?
you can work on your computer.
I did unplug it, so It's just my computer. Is that any better?
We'll have to see.
You're not echoing. But me and Julie are. Which hasn't happened before, so something strange is happening right now.
Sometimes, yeah. Well, sometimes technology doesn't always cooperate.
So I am going to talk slow so that you can hear the question through the echo.
Okay.
Wait, also, if we mute ourselves while whoever's talking, I'm going to mute myself while you're talking.
Okay, so you've muted yourself now, Julie?
Christine,
still hear that.
What?
Let's mute ourselves while Shereen's talking and see if that helps.
Okay. Okay, cool. So everyone's muted. Oh, I think it's working. Awesome. Julie's like amazing. Can I just give props to Julie? Like everyone who's listening right now, like she's so techie and cool and genius. Like amazing, the stuff she figures out. If I was alone, this would have never happened. We wouldn't understand each other. All right. So props to you, Julie. I love you. And Christine, I'm so glad I'm not echoing anymore, so I can actually connect with you. What I was going to say is that your work is so important. I love what you do. I love the way you do it. I love that there is such a spiritual aspect to it, and you do really acknowledge that light worker sort of soul curriculum and juicy goodness that you focus on while really being practical and action-oriented and helping people to apply it in their lives. I feel like oftentimes experts, in our industry are either one side of the pendulum or the other. Like they're super spiritual, like Wayne Dyer, where it's like, oh, but you don't necessarily get an action you can take from it. So you're like, I feel better, like I feel enlightened, but I don't know what to do with myself. And then there's the total opposite where it's like, oh, here's exactly what you do, here's exactly what you do, go sell, go make it happen, but there's no soul there. And so oftentimes that can feel, well, I've had coaches like that before, and it feels a little bit vacant to me. And coaches like that tend to like support me in having like physical burnout because I'm the type that needs the soul and I need that practical. So for all the people who Julie and I attract, they're similar. Like, so the people who are on this webinar really probably, like attracts like, probably need both. They need a lot of that soul curriculum and they need a lot of the action-oriented practical stuff. So for the people who are listening, if they are kind of at a place where maybe they do know what their soul curriculum is, they do know what it is that they want to do in this world, what would you say is like their first step or their first move to make where they can actually start to create something tangible to serve others and sort of jump on that energy you just talked about of like the energy of helping?
Well, I think the first thing is to really kind of backtrack, do a backwards timeline of like what helped you, like the different points in your life and what you were drawn to and what helped you and what you did. Because I think a lot of times we have this vast toolbox and we have all these resources and we forget about them, and we really need to go back and look. And I'm talking like, go 10, 20, go a long time back and sort of look at everything that's helped you and how it's really served you. And because, for me, so much of my work is based on things I've learned from other people or from books or whatever, and then things that have just kind of come through me, and then a hybrid of just making things my own. So doing that kind of backwards timeline and looking at what were the significant moments, what are the tools that really serve me, and what channels or what mediums do I want to use to offer those tools to other people. Because I think it's easiest to build a business off of something that worked for us, because we're so enthusiastic about it. So that would be my first thing, like be your own best client, be your own best customer, and write out really what has helped you and what has served you. Another thing to think about is, what really makes you mad in the world? Like, what do you really get passionate about? Because a lot of times the things that make us mad or get us fired up are areas where we can really make a difference and where we can really serve. So, and that actually makes great content. I think we live in a world where we're consumed with so much content, but good content, vulnerable content still rises to the top. And if you're an entrepreneur, especially in kind of the coaching, personal development area, you've got to create content. And if you're not a writer, you can do videos. And if you don't like the camera, you can write. And if you don't like either one of those things, you can do podcasts. But start to just get the content out there. And I think that the thing that has helped me so much in my business is it's always my intention to be vulnerable and relatable. You know, yes, I have expertise, and yes, after, you know, over a decade of doing this, I you know, have some tools in my tool belt and love giving advice and guidance to people. However, I never position myself as some guru that's like above or ahead of other people. So I think that, you know, really getting clear on what's the most authentic expression of you, what does that look like, and how do you want to communicate that in your brand?
Sorry, I just had a little delay while I was unmuting myself. Yeah, I actually really love that. I love that so much because, you know, that's one of the main reasons I kind of did the whole like awaken the rebel thing. Like obviously Awaken Your Rebel is all about really awakening to your intuition, into your spirit, into your truth. But when I say rebel, you know, not only does that sort of double as spirit and truth and all that good stuff, but it doubles as like do it your way, kind of like what you're suggesting here. Like you get to do exactly what works for you in the way that it works for you. And I love the suggestion of really looking back 10 to 15 years because oftentimes that's where the juiciest like marketing and branding will come from. It's so funny. Like a lot of my sort of like strengths or pain points from the past have really created this clarity of this rebel. I remember I was just telling my intern today, when I was in high school, I was actually, I got along well with everybody and I was really good at like sports and I was like voted homecoming queen and I sort of succeeded as what you would consider like success in high school. But I myself was actually miserable. Like I hated high school because the way people decided who was popular or the way the popular people disrespected the unpopular people, like I just was like, I don't like this game. I don't like the rules or the parameters that are set up here. And so even though I was allegedly like accepted into the popular group, I was like, I don't want to associate with you because I don't think that you show respect the way I think people deserve respect. And at the time, that made no sense to me. I remember being young and being really confused about it. Like, what is wrong with me that I allegedly do well here, but I hate it? Like, there's something wrong with me? But then here we are, like, fast forward, like, maybe 2 decades later, and I'm like, oh, I get it. There's this sort of rebellious spirit where I go by my own rules. And so for the people who are listening, I'm just trying to echo what Christine just said, that there are stories in your past or things from your past that may not fully make perfect sense to you quite yet, but if you just work on checking it out and really sort of more deeply understanding what that says about your soul curriculum, a lot of clarity can come through it. So I would love to hear like maybe a little story from you, Christine, like a quirky story or something that where you ended up, like I know you wanted to be a minister back in the day and that probably got shoved down and maybe got reappeared later. So I'd love to hear a story for you as far as like something in your past that came back when you started to really do this work.
Sure. Well, there are two things. You know, one of the things that my favorite thing to play when I was a little girl were two things. Teacher. Like, I loved playing teacher. Like, that was, like, what I really wanted to do. And it wasn't so much about the grading papers or anything like that, but being in front of a room and, like, teaching. So I would line up all my animals and dolls and whatever. I wasn't as into playing house as I was teacher as I got older. You know, and so it was like, that was a big clue for me. And the other clue for me growing up was that my dad would take us to his office on weekends, my sister and I, and he would always say, well, you can play in the secretary's, you know, desk. And I was like, I don't want to be the secretary. And I would go into the conference room and have like meetings in the conference room. You know, so all those were clues in terms of, you know, wanting to be my own boss and wanting to teach. So those were a couple things. And then sort of on more the soul line learning place, you know, I was teased a lot. I was not the popular girl at all. I was not the homecoming queen. I was the nerd. I was the loser. I was the awkward girl. There was an I Hate Christine club. I didn't really have any friends. I was very, very alone. And I really had a terrible relationship with myself, which created a lot of struggle in my life because I made not having friends mean there was something wrong about me. And so I really understand what having a dysfunctional, almost kind of self-hatred relationship with self is. And so much of my journey has been healing my relationship with myself and tools for, I mean, the book Expectation Hangover, a lot of it is about, it's not only about what happens in your life, but about your relationship with yourself. And so when I look back on how I've really healed my relationship with myself, that's given me a lot of tools. And people that tend to be attracted to my work are generally people that are hard on themselves, which is like everybody. But, you know, the overachievers, really hard on themselves, bad self-talk kind of people, like, they're my people. I have so much compassion for that.
I love that. And I, you know, as my own journey being, and I think most of our journeys through our wounded places into the gifts. I really like what you said about how you don't want to position yourself or choose to put yourself as a guru or someone who has it all figured out. And I really think it's so easy for us to like look and be like, oh, look what Christine's done. You know, she's done this and this and this, and that comparison game can be really easy to do. And I'm curious how you manage that in terms of your expression now, or like the sharing of what challenge or what's really happening for you in your life right now, because my experience is the challenges, of course, don't go away, and sometimes they get bigger as we expand our capacity to grow and be with what's really happening. And so I just love to hear a little bit about how you manage that as an entrepreneur who's achieved external success.
How I manage which part? The sharing of vulnerable moments, or how I manage the challenging time?
How you stay, like, how do you in yourself, because other people can put whatever they want on you, right? They can like project whatever they want onto you, but how do you in yourself stay grounded in and fully vulnerable to what's actually happening in your life for you?
Well, at this point, it's so much, you know, because until something is a habit, it's a discipline, right? So at this point, staying grounded in myself and connected to myself is so much a habit that I feel it more when I'm out of it. You know, I really notice like when I'm out of it, which was the subject of my blog last week, because I literally got knocked unconscious to kind of like put me back in place. Because last week I travel a lot, but last week was a lot in the East Coast, like snowstorms and everything, and it's a long story. You can read about it on my blog. I can share the whole thing. But I ended up fainting and knocking my head and getting a concussion. And of course, I'm going to write about that, you know, because I always share like what's happening for me. Like, hey, everybody, got off track. This is, you know, what happened, and this is what I'm learning from it. So it's just so become who I am. I think that I spent so many years trying to be somebody I wasn't. Trying to, you know, when you're that kid that's teased, you just want to fit in and you just want to be accepted. And I had to really do that for myself. And it's such a relief to be in this place. And it took me, it was not an overnight process, but it's such a relief to be in this place of, you know what, this is who I am and I really like it, and this is where I'm going to share from. It feels so aligned for me that I can't imagine like doing it any other ways. And I have a strong spiritual practice, a meditation practice. I take care of myself physically. I have an amazing support system. I give back. You know, there's things in my life that I do that support that kind of groundedness. It's not like I can just like flit around and do whatever I want and like I'm like, oh, namaste. Like I definitely work to keep that sense of groundedness.
Yeah, I love that the more you do it, it becomes a habit. It doesn't have to be a discipline anymore. And I just want to acknowledge you and thank you for sharing vulnerably and being real, because I think it is the thing that connects us to one another, is that place of realness. And I think I think most humans are just hungry for it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, so when my first book came out, like a big part of my story was that my fiance dumped me, and then 5 months later I met the man of my dreams and got married. And then when I decided to end that marriage and get divorced in my early 30s, it was like, oh man, like I'm known as like the girl who like lived happily ever after. Like that was all part of the story. And so I definitely was concerned about how that'd be perceived and how I wanted to spin it and all the stuff. And then I was like, no, like I'm just going to be real. I mean, I definitely didn't like blog about it right when it happened, you know, because I think that we have to like honor our process and we don't want to like put ourselves out there while we're still bleeding. But I definitely didn't wait till I was already to the other side of it to really share about it. And I had to really let go of other people's reactions and what people would think, and just be true of like, this is what's true for me, and this is what I'm learning. And so much of that divorce and that process was what Expectation Hangover was born out of. So again, I like to think I'm an alchemist. Like I like to transform things, you know, and that's really what my work is about. It's about alchemy inside myself, and then serving and teaching other people how to do that with their own lives.
Which is actually just like really, really cool and really amazing. I actually see you as one of the pioneers in our field, particularly because I see that authenticity and that desire within you to just be real and alchemize things and share it, as opposed to, like you said, being like, I'm the guru or like I'm the expert. Because I feel like it's really easy for, like Julie said, for us to go like, oh my God, look at everything Christine has done. And what we're doing when we do that is, like you said, a comparison coma, where what's happening is we're in our ego. Like our ego says, like, Christine is more than and I am less than. And then it would look at someone else and go, well, actually, they're less than me and I'm more than them. And it's just that whole game is like a mind, I'm going to cuss trying to state what I'm trying to state, but it's just not a good situation. So I really love that you're someone who does this work and supports people and gives and loves and teaches and all that good stuff while still really remaining humble in your spirit. And I would love to hear a little bit about, I know I've asked you about this before, but I'm so fascinated with it, just the minister aspect, like how you decided to go become ordained as a minister, like how that became sort of part of your current practice and what that process and journey was like for you.
I love that you asked me that. No one ever asked me about that part. I love that. Thank you. So in 2005, maybe 2006, after I was coaching and I had a practice, I felt a strong calling to go and pursue my master's degree in spiritual psychology from the University of Santa Monica, which, I mean, I've done a lot, and I have to say it's like the best transformational program out there, and I've pretty much done everything. And it's a 2-year program, and it's a master's degree program, so my ego got me there. Like, how cool, I have some letters behind my name. And I had no idea. Like, I showed up with my laptop the first day, and it's really not like a traditional classroom. It's highly experiential. It's very spiritual, not any religion-based. But it's also, like, you know, in the context of a classroom and learning. And it was a beautiful program for me on so many levels. And for the first time, I really developed like a relationship with God. I'll use the word God. Use whatever word works for you if you're listening. And it wasn't like that God was just a concept anymore. It was I really felt it. And I got very interested in spirituality, and especially sort of the spiritual heritage of the University of Santa Monica, which comes from a place called MSIA, which is Movement of Spiritual Inner Awareness. And I started really studying the teachings of that, and it just resonated with me. It just was like a fit for me. And I had been sort of a spiritual gypsy, like this and that and all these different things, and I had all these different teachers, and I really wanted to find a container that felt aligned for me and go deep within that container. And so through my work, I just felt the calling to become a minister in that, and really to me it was really about making an oath, making a vow, making a commitment to be a light worker. So not only do the work for myself, but to bring that to other people. And it's a standard that I hold myself to when I'm out in the world, like knowing, I don't go around saying, hey, I'm a minister, but when I'm out in the world, I see that as a responsibility to really minister to people, either in an action or just in sending them light and sending them blessings, whatever it may be. And it's taken my work to a deeper level because I think we're all so capable of so much. I mean, the human potential is amazing, and most of us only use 10% of it. And the potential we have when we really open up to being instruments is just like, it just like takes it to an entire next level. So it's deepened my own connection with God, and it's really shifted my work in terms of being able to go deeper with people and be able to create those results of alchemy even sooner.
That's really interesting too, because I feel like, you know, what we're talking about today is like awaken to your higher calling and build a business and lifestyle that you want. So like there's an element of like entrepreneurship, there's an element of like freedom and having the life you want, whatever that means to you, whether it's like family or travel, who knows. But then that higher calling thing really is spiritual. Like the awaken to your higher calling is really, like you said, soul curriculum. And so it's kind of, it feels a little controversial to like talk about God, you know, because some people might get turned off or some people might get turned on and you just don't know what reaction. I don't really think there's any way we could really help people tap into, awaken their higher calling and build whatever physical life that they actually want without going there a little bit. So being the spiritual minister that you are, my dear, if you're working with someone who really wants to, like, you know, figure out, like, okay, I know that I want more freedom, I know I want to be an entrepreneur, maybe they don't know what their higher calling is, they know it's something more, so they're dissatisfied with the current situation, but they just don't know what modality to go into, aside from what you had mentioned earlier, because that was a really good suggestion of looking at their past, is there any other little tips and tricks that can help us to get clear on what our higher calling might be?
Well, I think first you got to remove some roadblocks, because a lot of times a higher calling doesn't become really clear if your own issues are all up in your face, and that's why in my last book I start with the emotional level, and I really teach people how to heal their issues, and really it's sort of like any kind of unprocessed anger, sadness, shame, abuse, issues, any of those things. It's sort of like dirt on your windshield, right? And you can kind of see, but you can't see very clearly. And to me, doing the emotional work is like taking the wipers and just clearing the windshield, And it's that, you've got to kind of start with yourself and be your own, like I said, best client and customer, in terms of whatever it was that got you into a job that you didn't like, or a relationship you didn't like, or whatever. There's something there that needs to be healed and cleared. And a lot of times it's your relationship with yourself that's the first thing to work on. And then once there's more peace inside, because when our head is constantly going and trying to figure things out and judging ourselves or judging someone else or just kind of in our own stuff, you cannot hear the voice of your intuition. And so choices that we make are going to be based on the ego. Just like my choice to be an agent, which I thought was my passion. The truth is I just really liked TV and I wanted to be in the popular crowd, and the entertainment industry is like the adult version of the popular crowd. So I thought that was my higher calling, but it was my insecurity and my pain that was really driving me to that. It wasn't until I resolved my pain that I was able to really open up and hear what my higher calling is. So that's what I would say. You've got to deal with your stuff and get out of your own way.
I really love
that. So juicy. And then,
yeah,
go ahead, Julie.
I really love that, and I find that, I do intuitive work, so a very, very, very common question is that someone wants a channeled response to is, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? And I used to get so stuck. I'd be like my ego when I was first starting this work would be like, how am I going to help this person if I don't know, if I can't help them access their purpose? And I realized very quickly, through my own journey, right, our purpose, we can actually, even when there's emotional stuff there, our purpose is to start listening and following. And the listening might start with clear the windshield, clear the windshield. Spirit, God, your intuition, the deeper part of yourself might be slamming you as hard as they can to say, gently of course, listen, and it starts by just listening to the next step. That will lead to the unfolding of something bigger, but it might not look like we think it's going to look. And we can't have the access to that passion place, because the thing that's loudest is the pain, right? And so I love what you're saying, and I encourage all of us to keep reminding ourselves that we just have to listen and follow. And it doesn't always look like we're going to know the 10-year plan just because we really want to live on purpose. We can live on purpose right now, even if that looks like my purpose right now is to really be with this part of me that's so scared that I keep doing this thing that holds me back.
Yeah. Well, I have a quick story about that. So Mona, who I referenced earlier, I started seeing her when I was 23. And I went to her, I was miserable in my relationship and my job, and I really wanted to figure out what to do. And years I saw, it was like 5 years of that. And finally when I came to her after I had that moment and people kept saying, will you be a coach, will you be a coach? I came to her and I'm like, I think my purpose may be to work with people and be a coach. And she's like, oh yeah, I know. I've known that since I met you. And I'm like, what? You knew? And I've been coming week after week and you did not tell me this? And I was furious. And she was like, honey, you had to figure it out on your own. And you had to get out of your own way to be able to serve. She's like, yeah, I always knew that. I was like, I want my money back. Because, no one can tell us. No one can tell us. We have to get there on our own. And if you really just have faith in that and faith in your journey, it does come. And I agree with what you're saying, Julie. Our purpose is not necessarily in the form of a job. My purpose is to be the best version of myself that I possibly can be, and be more aware of the love that I am today than I was yesterday, and show up that way in the world. My career is an expression of that, that we can't get so caught up in the form of our career, what we're doing, and let that define us as our purpose. It's not.
I love what you're saying. I call that the integrated self. When it's really great when that purpose becomes this expression through our work. That's awesome, and it takes a lot of integration and commitment to our own journey, our own listening, but it does not preclude us. That's the journey, the continued integration, the continued expression of it in all different parts of our life. And for me, that's the most exciting journey to be on. All right, so I want to actually, go ahead. I want to take a minute to tell everybody, like, one, if you have a question for Christine, chat us up. What's your question? I'm sure that we can support you and would love to do that. And the other thing is that check out this little pop-up here that says your custom freedom blueprint, because Shereen and I are offering complimentary sessions with the two of us to really get clear on what freedom looks like for you, what that purpose could be that you could be living in this moment, how to navigate through any of the stuff in the way of that. We'd love to do that. So go ahead. It's the-freedom-blueprint.com/apply, or you can click right here in the webinar. Yeah, and I'd love to see if there's any questions that come. Let's see. I'm reading the chat comments.
So while she's reading, Christine, I'll just monopolize your time if you would let me. By the way, selfishly, I'm so interested in going to get a master's in spiritual psychology right here in Santa Monica. So just letting you know, you've totally inspired me. You and Kate both, actually, your friend who you referred to me for the cubicle monkey.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, totally. You just, both of you have said such good things about it. So, you know, for the people who are listening, like if they're in that place where they're getting super serious, and let's say they just, part of their clearing of the windshield is that they are scared shitless that they won't be able to make a living if they have a business similar to yours or mine or Julie. Like if they actually are being, like their offering is a service, like maybe an inner work type service. What would you say to someone who has that fear?
Yeah. Well, okay, so there's two responses. A typical response sort of in the personal transformation world would be, you know, work on your wealth consciousness and see yourself as abundant and work on your money story and all those kinds of things. And I definitely agree with that. I also will say, know yourself and what you need. So for me, when I really started to build this business, I knew that I would have a lot less fear if I had a job that helped me pay my bills. So I committed to a job where I worked, you know, 9 to 5. I had a couple of them, and I would work on my business at night and on weekends. And that is just what worked for me, you know, because I know myself. My dad is a CPA, like I had just paid off all my debt. Like I knew that's what worked for me. So, and at the same time, I worked on my wealth consciousness. You know, I read The Science of Getting Rich. I did the Abundance book by Jen Randolph Price. Like I read a lot of those things so that I could shift it at the same time, because I think to have this, a lot of times there's this expectation that we're supposed to like pendulum. Like we're supposed to move from thinking I'm a loser to like Louise Hay ourselves to I'm the most amazing person. Life flows to me easily and effortlessly. And I'm not, you know, saying affirmations aren't great, but if you try to go from here to here, like there's a part of me that's like, like I don't believe you and like I don't trust you. And we have to know these parts of ourselves, right? So it's like giving yourself permission to take little steps. And again, I'm that combination of like the spiritual and the practical. So for me, it's like maybe have like a part-time job or something that gives you that income that's coming in, and work on your wealth consciousness at the same time and build your business. And then there will come a point where you're like, okay, I'm still a little scared, but not scared enough to not do it. And then you'll quit. And that's what it was for me. Like I did that for a year, and then I was like, no, I'm done. I'm going to become a full-time entrepreneur. But I think a big part of it is like I trusted myself enough to become a full-time entrepreneur because I trusted myself because of the way I took care of myself the 2 years to get there. Does that make sense?
Yes, it totally makes sense, and I love that practical information. Again, and it's so funny, like you talked about the things you get pissed off about. I get really pissed off when coaches tell people to like quit their job cold turkey and just like trust the universe. I'm like, oh my God, that's so unstable. Like people are literally gonna lose their shit. So I love that your advice is like honor yourself. Like if you know you're a person who needs that stability, first of all, everybody needs stability. But if you know that there's no way you could jump off the freaking cliff without a parachute, then don't. It doesn't mean you'll never be an entrepreneur. It doesn't mean you're never going to move towards the things that you want. It just means you have to allow yourself to take those baby steps. So it totally makes sense. I love that advice. I hope you guys are all listening with like as big as your ears can possibly get, because I feel like a lot of the people who come to us feel discouraged that they're not far enough fast enough. Like, oh, I should have already made it happen, or I should have this, or I should have that. And I feel like that's kind of what you're talking about, the expectation hangover, or just not allowing themselves their due process. Like maybe their soul needs to clear more stuff and they're just not aware, or maybe they don't need to measure themselves by the dollars coming in the door from their business. Maybe it's supposed to be an expression of their souls until it is the dollars coming in the door or whatever. So I love that advice that you're giving. I really appreciate that sort of grounded perspective.
I really do want our peeps to take that in, because we get that a lot, right? You and I, Shereen, we hear that all of the time. And like, Christine also had a job while she was building her business. I worked while I was starting to build my business. Like, it's okay. It's absolutely okay. Give yourself permission to be where you are, because then you can actually enjoy where you are. So just like wanting to like anchor this one in.
All about the attitude you're doing it with. It's all about like, I really was like, all right, like I wasn't going to this job being like, oh, I have to do this because I have no money. I was like, no, this job is basically me investing in my business. And I gave everything I could to the job. And I also was like, you know what, being an entrepreneur, I'm going to be making mistakes on my own dime. Like, I'm going to pay a lot of attention to this company and how people work and the mistakes that are made and the successes that are had and how people interact. And I made my job another like way to kind of study business and study human behavior. And I think a lot of times we don't milk experiences for all they're worth. So even if you're at a job and even if you don't like it, what can you gain from it? What can you learn? What can you observe? How can you be a light worker in your current job? It's like in those moments where things aren't great and we aren't necessarily like doing exactly what we want to do that we learn the most about ourselves and how we transform in those experiences. So if you want to be like a heart-centered entrepreneur helping people, but you can't be in a good mood at your job, there's a disconnect there.
Love that. Yeah, so true. Thank you. And we've got a couple questions I'd like to ask. John was saying he loves the theme of creating a business on personal experience and authentic self as opposed to get a job or do market research. Okay, nice. I'm going to just read the question. Can you offer some advice on dealing with friends or family that perhaps from a place of best intention try to persuade you to get a real job or follow the market trend? So he said you're answering as he's writing, but what about when your friends and family aren't supportive of what it is that your heart is calling you towards? Do you have any words of wisdom around that?
Yeah, I think one of the things, talking back to freedom and my value, one of the things that has freed me most is I really have gotten that what other people think of me is none of my business. And I have really let go of people pleasing or having anyone understand, me or what I do. Now that doesn't mean I'm a huge jerk and I'm selfish or anything like that. But it's a lot of energy to try to get people to agree with you. Here's the thing. If you're an entrepreneur and you're building your business and you constantly feel like you're justifying or defending yourself or explaining yourself, you're wasting a lot of time and energy. So the response I invite you to use when people are like, you should do this, is simply, I hear you. Thank you. And then shut up. The more you explain, the more you talk, the more you get into it, the more they're going to be engaged in it. And know that it's coming from love. But here's the thing. If it's triggering you, that's feedback for you. Because if it's triggering you, there's something inside of you that doesn't believe you can do it. If you really believed you could do it fully and trusted yourself, then it wouldn't matter what people said. Wouldn't matter at all. Like if someone walked up to me and was like, you're a monkey, I'd be like, no, I'm not. Like it wouldn't trigger me at all because I'm very clear I'm not a monkey. But like if someone says something to me and I feel like I need to defend or justify, it's like there's something that is triggering inside of me. So, the response, I hear you, the looking inside and being like, where do you not believe it? And resolving that inside yourself. And then also just know that the people that love us, like, they're coming from their lens. So even if it sounds like criticism, it often is coming from a loving place. And people tend to project their own fears on us. You know, I know, for example, when I was leaving my marriage, I had so many people, especially women, say, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Like, he's a good guy, da 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 da. And it was like their own fear was coming at me versus really just, you know, honoring and respecting where I was at. So we've got to let go what other people are thinking. We've got to forgive them and forgive ourselves for ever buying into anything that they say.
I love that. That is fantastic advice. And we have another question from Alicia. She says, Dear Christine, it's Alicia. I've emailed you a few times, and I hope you remember me. Just wanted to ask, what would you suggest when things seem to be stagnant in one's life? At the moment, I have an idea, but things seem so quiet and oftentimes confusing where I just wonder what is going on, you know? Anyway, any insight about that would be greatly appreciated. Thanks so much for your guidance. Loads of love to you. XXO.
Yeah. Oh, that's sweet. Hi, Alicia. I'm so glad you wrote in. You know, when things are stagnant, it can mean a couple things. So momentum happens when we continue to move or evolve. So there may be like a level deeper you need to get inside yourself. You need to take your spirituality to another level. You need to take your creativity to another level. You need to do some deeper work with yourself. You need to shake things up in terms of getting a new teacher or coach, or maybe it's a trip or something like that. Like there's something that's sort of stuck energetically when things are stagnant. If you feel that doesn't resonate, like if you feel like, no, like I'm moving and grooving and whatever, but it's kind of stagnant, then two things may be happening. One, either it needs a little more time, you know, because the physical level reality is the densest, so it's the last thing to kind of show up. So it may need some time, and it just may need to like gestate for a little while, or it may be feedback for you. You know, as much as you may not like to hear this, it may be feedback that, hey, not this direction. And the thing that can happen when we're so passionate about something is we get tunnel vision, right, on what that is. And tunnel vision is good in some ways in terms of not comparing ourselves to others, but tunnel vision isn't great if we're not like looking around to the guidance, you know, the guidance that's coming in, the messages that are coming in. So I would really do some meditation on it, do some writing on it, do some reflection as to what out of those three things, which feels like it most resonates to you in terms of why things feel stagnant.
I love that. I feel like sometimes we can't see yet also what's on the other side of why things aren't moving. Like they do need time to gestate. Like for me, this is like the biggest, like as soon as things slow down in my life, something in me will be like, like what's wrong? And I have to continually remind myself that's the part of the creative process that I particularly am uncomfortable with. And the more I can drop in and actually let the stillness happen, stillness is part of the creative process. So sometimes just discerning, is this just stillness? Is this just like, or is it actually stagnant? Is also like, so for me, I'm just hearing that. I'm like, I have to remind myself that I have to let that part of the wave come so that the next thing can show itself. So.
Yeah. That's great, really, that distinction between stillness and stagnant. That's really great. Yeah, exactly.
All right, we got one more question. Let's see. Annetta asks, Christine, do you have a suggestion for the best manner in which to clean the windshield? On a spiritual journey with meditation, prayer, studying different means, is there one that is successful more often?
Well, the spiritual stuff is great, and that's like the last section of my treatment plan for expectation hangover. Like, honestly, it's, you know, and I'm not just trying to plug I don't even see it as my work. It's like the work that's kind of come through me that's helped me and so many people. It's that emotional level. It's like dealing with the emotions first, and then it's really rewiring your brains and your thoughts, and then it's looking at behavior and looking like when you're coming from your compensatory strategy, when you're kind of falling into your avoidance trap, changing the behavior, and then to me, it's that spiritual level of like really getting the guidance, because that's when we get the more clear guidance. And then as we go through life, we integrate all those things. You know, we're responsible for our emotions. We release them rather than recycle them. We know that our brain is malleable. We know that with the one thing we have control over is our response to our own thoughts. So we're careful about our reframing and our rewiring. We're looking at what motivates our behavior, like what are the actions we're choosing, and then we're surrendering and forgiving and tuning into that internal compass in terms of guidance in the next step.
I love that. And I think it's so important because there's so much, it's so easy to want to go to the spiritual and say,
Right.
I want to be one with everything. I want to choose that place. But I often say it's through the journey, through our hurt places, the hurt places inside of us, that we have access to that. It's not like we get to skip over them and then, oh, I don't want to feel that. It's like through them.
It
So
is that, because like if you haven't noticed, we're all in human bodies, right? And like we decided, like on a soul level, we're like, I want to be in a human body and experience that. And so part of our experience and our responsibility as humans is to feel, you know, and we know light because we know dark. And one of the coping strategies that doesn't work for treating an expectation hangover that I talk about is the spiritual bypass. Is like, I'm just going to chant and breathe my way out of it and like, float around and go to Bali and all those things are great. I chant and breathe and go to Bali and do all those things, but I've also like hit a lot of pillows and screamed and like cried and processed stuff and gone back and talked to younger parts of myself and done the kind of messy work as well.
I love the messy work. Yeah, let's plug the messy work.
That is the fun stuff. So for those of you who are listening, I would love it if you would take Julie and I up on our offer to give you a potentially a free custom blueprint session if you do apply and our team approves. We're here for you. We've just kind of made a pact to be of service, which is why we've put this whole series together and are offering our time. Christine, before we let you go, because I know you've got stuff to do, I would love to know, like, for people who are on this journey and have tuned into this session with you to soak all of you up because you know the path that they're on and what they're searching for, what would kind of be your last words or what you'd want to leave them with?
Oh boy, I would really say, like, don't use being hard on yourself as a way to motivate yourself. I think that we default to that and almost don't even realize we're doing it because it becomes so habitual. So think about how you want to inspire yourself and how you want to be pulled forward and really how you want to serve yourself and really serve the world. And just know there's enough to go around for everyone. I think as this industry becomes more saturated, people's fears of who am I to, blah, blah, blah. Well, who are you not to? You're no more or less qualified or gifted than anybody else. And so I think really embracing that, accepting that, and forgiving yourself for ever thinking there was anything wrong with you or any time that you thought you weren't worthy, and really invest on having a more loving relationship with yourself, because to me that's the key to everything.
Thank you. I honestly just want to, like, if you were like a little fire right now, I just want to throw fuel on it and like echo it and share it because it's so good and it's very healing to hear you talk about these things and to, powerfully like say, like, I've gone to the messy places along with going to Bali. It's okay to be imperfect. It's okay to be in the process. So for all of you, support you in whatever way this does support you. And Christine, we just want to say thank you so much for your time, your generosity, your soul, your spirit, your wisdom. It's been such a gift and such a blessing.
My pleasure. I love the work you both are doing, and I can feel like energetically how awesome this community is. Like all the people, like it's really great. So thank you so much for inviting me in.
Thank you so much for being here. Everybody, we'll see you back tomorrow for another juicy interview. Thanks to Christine. Please share any love you've got for her in the comments. We'll pass them along, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.